I wish I'd known that vulnerability was a superpower. I would definitely find a way of letting that young woman know that.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sweat Strategy and Success. This is the go to resource for entrepreneurs in the health and wellness industry to become the best versions of themselves, both personally and professionally. My name is Soleil Rain. I'm a marketer and passionate storyteller, and my mission is to share the untapped stories of those shaping this industry. Now, today we have the incredible Dr. Katherine Lawson. Now, instead of just providing you with her degrees and her accomplishments, which she has already amassed in wealth, I'm going to start off with a quick story of what you can expect in today's podcast. So let's get into it. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, shadowy forest. The air is thick with uncertainty, the path ahead obscured by tangled vines of fear and doubt. Many would hesitate, turn back, or sit still, paralyzed by the unknown. But some, like Katherine, take a deep breath, step forward, and trust that beyond the darkness lies something extraordinary. In her dreams, Katherine found a canvas for this transformation. Today, Katherine embodies resilience and creativity, not as abstract ideas, but as daily practices. She builds companies, relationships, and beauty in her world. As you listen to this episode, picture yourself at the edge of your own forest, with your own challenges, pain, questions, and dreams. By the end of this conversation, you will feel as though you too can step into the unknown and find community, strength, and new tools waiting for you. Today, you will feel inspired by yourself, other people, and the world around you. Welcome to Sweat Strategy and Success. You just returned from Costa Rica. Is that
I
correct?
did. I did 2 days ago.
And
Mhm.
how was it?
It was amazing. I was with my, students, current cohort of students, and it's really one of the most beautiful parts of my job, so it was great. Plus Costa Rica.
Yeah, plus it's gorgeous. And can you tell me a little bit about what you were doing in Costa Rica and what the Dream School is?
Sure. So the Awaken the Dream School it's a certification program. It's for healthcare providers and wellness providers and really anyone who's interested in supporting folks who are interested in psychedelic medicines. So we train people to help people prepare for psychedelic experiences and then integrate psychedelic experiences after they've had them. So to be clear, we don't train people to serve psychedelic medicines or to do anything illegal. We train them to help people get ready because let's be in clear acknowledgement. People are using these medicines, interacting with these medicines, whether they're legal or not. So they deserve the education about how to prepare safely and what to expect. We offer that. And then after people have these experiences, which can be quite life changing, we train people to help them integrate those experiences into their day to day lives in meaningful and transformative ways.
Yeah, I know you've told me. I mean, we know each other and we've known each other for quite some time, and this is a project that you've been working on for years. So how does it feel to come to this point in the Awaken the Dream School and having kind of your dreams come true almost a little bit with creating this venture?
Yeah, it's really kind of amazing, honestly. This particular cohort was sort of poignant. This was the last group that I'm training under this particular um, delivery model that we've been using since the launch of the school. We're changing things a bit going forward because we're growing. So we'll be offering the kind of preparation and education piece that's online now at a self-paced way so that you can kind of begin and end that whenever you want. And we're expanding the retreats, which is the in-person intensive part of the training. Instead of just having them in Costa Rica, we'll now be hosting those in Costa Rica, Portugal, and Bali. So I'm sort of in awe that this is all happening in addition to the other elements of growth that we're going into. In fact, you are one of the first people who will publicly know that Awaken the Dream School is now going to be a part of a larger school that I'm launching, which will be theschoolofpsychedelics.com. So our domain name, and we're launching that as well. That will hold the 6-month certification that I just described to you. It will also hold a subscription platform to educate the general public and organizational group trainings. So the school is growing kind of exponentially. And
Wow.
I'm I'm sort of in awe of it. I really sometimes am like, I don't know that this is me that is actually responsible for all of this. I have an amazing team. I just took on a business partner in New Zealand, who's incredibly talented, but it's almost like what's happening is a response kind of to what's being called forward in the world. You know, one of the sort of tenets of what it is that we're offering is that education is safety. And
Mhm.
so, if people are going to interact with these medicines, if these medicines are going to change the world, which they absolutely have the potential to do, we have to have safety and ethics and all kinds of things that come by way of education. And so that's what we're doing is basically expanding the different ways that people can educate themselves about these ancient ways of healing.
Mhm. That's gorgeous. Yeah, I know something that I did want to touch base on during this podcast is the current environment that we live in. I mean, we live in such a tense and contentious environment between politics and social media and the wars and just so many things that we see throughout our day to day that
Mhm.
having a space within ourselves and having that education is so important to maintain being a good neighbor. You talk about being a good ancestor, maintaining these pieces of ourself that are so vital to us. And I think often in the anxiety of it all, we can forget how to be good neighbors, how to be good ancestors, how to be good family members, just because it feels so stressful.
Mhm. Well, one of the things I think that's part of what you're touching on is actually what we've kind of lost and forgotten is how to be in community.
Mhm.
And that's really something that sits pretty deeply with people who have psychedelic experiences. One of the main sort of effects that people come away with is that, that they're part of a whole. And I think that that opens up places in people to be able to approach others with less of the protections and the judgments or shame or all kinds of things that we have been indoctrinated with, over time. And so what I see happening around the field, around this topic and around people's experiences is communities popping up. And what they have in common is this sort of awakening experience of who and what they really are and who and what we really are. And they continue that, they meet in community and they stay in community and the community expands. And this sense of being a part of something is really critical. Um, I believe it's critical to mental health. And it's a part of why psychedelics are such a good tool for those struggling with their mental health. Um, but yeah, I frankly, you know, I'm not allowed to prescribe or advocate, right? Because these medicines are illegal, or most of them are. But I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if it fell into the water.
Right, by accident. And that's so interesting. Why do you say that?
Because of the awakening experience that people have following interacting with some of these psychedelic molecules. Um, they are I think that it would soften some of the protections that people have around them that cause them to do harmful things. I think that hurt people, and I think that these medicines are healing in a very profound way that is not just sort of biological or physiological, but it's spiritual. And
Mm.
by that, I do not mean religious, but it is spiritual. And I think that if more of us could tune into or know that oneness, that sense of being a part of something in a really profound way, it would prevent a lot of the ugliness and a lot of the division, as you were referring to, and a lot of the things that we're doing amongst and to each other that are just incredibly painful and destructive.
Yeah, very good point. And I know that you yourself have gone through different psychedelic experiences and that you have come out with new ideas of what your life should look like. And I just kind of want to go back to your roots a little bit about who Catherine is, because when you look at your childhood, you know, you've mentioned before in other podcasts that you grew up in a chaotic home. And
Mhm.
so, looking back at your childhood self now, what would you say to your childhood self? What are you surprised about how far you've come, especially in the work that you do? What does your childhood self look like back then, and who are you now?
Mhm. Well, at this point, childhood is quite a while back. So, you know, I think that one of my strengths was being somehow I was always hopeful, even from the depths of horrors. I always had a sense of hopefulness, and I would encourage myself to hang on to that, that there really is a reason to be hopeful. Um, because there were also times that I wasn't able to, but I believe that that's one of the strengths that got me through. Um, I also think that I would encourage myself, younger self, maybe not childhood, but maybe a little past childhood, young woman, to not harden my heart, to lead with my heart. Survivors can sometimes get a little bit dissociated from love and softness and heartfulness can sometimes feel like a kind of vulnerability that's dangerous. So, yeah. So here's another way of saying that. I wish I'd known that vulnerability was a superpower. I would definitely find a way of letting that young woman know that.
And when did dreams start appearing as an important theme in your life?
Well, 2 places. One, as a child, I had, a repetitive nightmare that, really lasted through my young childhood, and then I kind of put it somehow managed to get it to stop for a while and then reappeared later on in my life when I was training, just before I started training to be a psychotherapist. So, that dream having such a profound emotional, visceral effect on me, I think probably had something to do with it. And then when I went to graduate school to get my master's in counseling psychotherapy, I went to a program that was based in depth psychotherapy, which is heavily based on Jung's ideas and dream work. And I wrote my master's thesis on dream work. Also had to do a lot of psychotherapy while I was in that program and was fortunate enough to have an analyst who worked my dreams with me. And I just got a really firsthand view at how efficiently our dreams help us to incorporate unconscious material into our waking lives in ways that we can then um, work them into wholeness, a whole way of being rather than a fractured way of being for those who are survivors.
For my dreams, you know, I usually have pretty vivid dreams. I can remember a lot. Like, I'm just thinking about the dreams that I had last night. Like, I can remember some good, like, major pieces in them, but never did I look at my dreams, really before I met you and say, oh, this meant something to my waking conscience that my unconscious is trying to tell me. And now that now that I can ask myself these questions, it's really interesting to sit with your dreams, especially like your weird dreams, your uncomfortable dreams, the dreams that you're just like, oh no, fuck, like why did I think about, why did I dream about that? And ask yourself, like, why is it that I'm having these dreams and what do they represent in my life?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I mean, once you come to understand the value of having a relationship with your dream life, which is really, you can call it the unconscious, you can call it the deep psyche, and you can call it your soul, right? All of those things are feeding those images up to our consciousness by way of dreams. And once you begin having a relationship with them, it's pretty difficult to just dismiss your dreams at that point as just mind chatter or whatever other theories there are about dreams. Um, every single man, woman, and child on the planet is dreaming every single night that they sleep. So that's for nothing? Maybe, but I don't think so. And so, yeah, so that's a big part of how I got here is because I figured out over about a decade of working with people on psychedelic integration that the very same practices that I was using for dream work to help people integrate their sleeping visions or dreams, um, you could apply those same practices to psychedelic visions and also get some understanding of why these images were coming forward now. One of the main kind of understandings of that is that the images that show up in your dreams and your visions are not literal. They are based more on symbology and archetypes and basically metaphor, what they mean to you, not literally what they are. And that's a good place to start for anybody who wants to sit and think on their dream imagery.
Yeah, and so when we're thinking about our dreams and the symbology of our dreams, I remember maybe when I was younger, I would look up online like, "Oh, like what does like ants mean in my dream?" or something like that. When we think about symbology in our dreams, is it more something that we need to sit with and ask, okay, what do I think this symbology means? Or is there a, Carl Jung version, or is there somebody or something that we should be looking to when we want to decode our dreams a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So, the person that you want to look to when you want to decode your dreams is yourself.
Mm.
And this is why. Because the understanding is that the images that are coming up to us in our dream are coming very particularly to us for the meaning that's held in that image. So, okay, let's say both of us have a dream where there's a frog, right? If I have a dream and there's a frog in it, this dream is about terror, disgust, and fear because I have a phobia of frogs, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so if I was trying to understand what this dream was about, I've just gotten a lot closer by jotting down terror, disgust, and fear. Okay. But if you, and I'm going to make this up, had a dream about a frog, it could mean kissing a prince, fairy tales, cuteness, right? And so that would be the meaning closer to the meaning of your dream. Our two dreams with the very same image would mean nothing remotely similar, right? And so you have to understand that the dream belongs to the dreamer. The dreamer is the authority because they understand what their associations or their waking life meaning is behind those images.
Mm, that's a very good point. And I think for a lot of people, it will mean very different things. And so one thing that means something for somebody means something completely different for somebody else. And I don't know why, but I love that you're terrified of frogs.
I don't, especially when I work in Costa Rica all the time in the jungle rainforest.
Did you see any frogs while you were there?
I did. I always
Oh.
do. I've been challenged to, you know, handle it.
Well, I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you had a good experience in Costa Rica. When I create these podcasts, the my audience and the people who I want to provide insight to are entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And you are kind of a serial entrepreneur, I would call you. Somebody who continues to start businesses and, continues to thrive. And the reason why I think it's so important that we talk about, trauma in dreams and their effect on our lives is because in entrepreneurship, people don't talk about the hardships that you have to constantly push through in order to create businesses. There's
Mhm.
constantly things going on in our everyday lives, in our family, and our friendships that can affect the work that we do and the output that we have into our businesses.
Mm.
And so I kind of want to start going into this a little bit in your own experience in creating businesses through trauma. When did you start your first business? You'll have to remind me.
Mm. I think I was 26-ish, and I opened a vintage clothing store.
Oh, I love that. And what was going on in your life at 26?
I was, I had been working in a shoe store, and I was really sick of that. I had been a bartender, and I was really sick of that. I never finished my undergrad, so it was way after this that I went back and got my undergrad when I was 30 years old. So, my options were limited, and so I decided to start my own business because I was not really very good at working for other people. I felt like I um, was underpaid, which many people who work in retail or bartending are, and overworked. And I was like, well, if I'm going to work this hard and be this smart, I'm just going to go start my own business. And so I did. And I got a small business loan in Burlington, Vermont, and opened a store.
Oh, beautiful. I love that it was a vintage clothing store. That's actually that's a great start. And obviously you're wearing this beautiful sweater today too, so you're very obviously fashionable. Um it's followed you throughout your life. Um
Mhm.
what was those first steps that you needed to take in order to start a business? What was the thoughts behind that?
Well, I went to City Hall actually and found out what initiatives there were for single mothers. Back then, I think the term they might have used is minority, not that, those of us people of color are minorities in this world in any way, shape, or form, but that's the language we used back there. So I went back then, so I went to City Hall and I said, "Are there any opportunities, for, business development?" There was a business development office, I think, in City Hall, and so I found out that I could qualify for a small business loan, and then I learned how to write a business plan, and I got a small business loan. No one was more surprised than me. Um, and so with that, I was able to rent a storefront, and I hired somebody to help me design a program to keep track of, clothes that I had on consignment, and I started going to yard sales and flea markets, and yeah, I just step by step did what I had to do. I think with every business that I've ever had, including this one, um, I was flying on passion, you know? I was not thinking about that I couldn't do it or that I wouldn't do it. I understood from my own passion about vintage clothing and style that other people would feel the same way. And so that sort of motivated me to keep going and to sort of have a can do feeling about it. I can do this. And I tell a lot of people that now. I mean, if you feel at the beginning of starting a business or even early on like it's a push, like it's a grind at the very beginning, you're probably not going to survive. Yeah, flying on passion and fun and love even for what it is that you're doing, I think that's what really gets people through it, through the difficulties of making something that's a dream, right? That's an ideation into reality.
Yeah, and so after the vintage business, where did you go next? I know at some point you moved to California, correct? Was this the next step, or what was the next step in your journey?
I would say that after owning my own business, I had a lot of sort of not monumental jobs or businesses. I was a Pilates instructor in Costa Rica. I taught the Damas Diplomáticas, so all of the women associated with the various embassies in Costa Rica, and that was my own business. And again, I loved it. Um, but what started happening upon closing my first business, which was that store, is I started looking back at I want to be educated.
Mm,
And then, I was able to finish my undergraduate. I ended up moving out of the country. I lived in both Haiti and Costa Rica. When I decided to, um, leave Costa Rica, that's when I knew I wanted to get my master's degree, um, and move towards psychology, right? So I had a business as an independent practitioner and then this. But there was a period of time that I really felt that education was missing. There was also a period of time that I thought, well, I can't do it. I'm too old. I waited too long. Na, 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 na. And I'm really glad that I didn't listen to that voice because once I got into school, it really, I really loved it. It really fed me. And I definitely couldn't have done the things that I've done since there without it.
mm. Yeah, how did that force a change of direction in your life, utilizing education to further both who you are as a person and where you are today in terms of your businesses?
Well, I think that it allowed me to dream even bigger. It broadened my ideas of who I was because I came to understand that I am an intellectual more than fashionable, for example, right?
Mhm.
And then you put the 2 together and it's fabulous, you know? And so, yeah, it changed my way of thinking about myself, and it also allowed me to dream bigger because I had a bigger skill set. It broadened my network of people who I knew and who could support me or guide me or at least cheer me on. Yeah, and those all of those things are invaluable.
Yeah. And you got your degree in, you have to remind me, what did you get your master's degree in?
First, I got my master's in counseling psychotherapy, and then I got a 3-year certification in a dream work practice called embodied imagination. And during that time, I also got a doctorate in mind body medicine, and I got a specialty in integrative mental health.
That's great. And do you feel like you were pulled towards therapy, embodied imagination for a specific
Abs-
reason? Yeah.
Absolutely. Two specific reasons. One, to heal myself, and two, to help others to heal. I think And this isn't about me. I'm really saying this is a generalization. I feel that the best healers are wounded healers. They work from a very specific kind of empathy or compassion. Um, and that's not to say that people who've not been wounded cannot be good healers either. But I don't know very many people who've never been wounded. So it's really more a matter of people who've chosen to really dig into that, right, and see what that's about. Um, and so yeah, those were really the driving forces, and then as I dreamed bigger and bigger and wanted to have more and more impact, I would say that the degrees sort of felt like a means to an end. I knew that wasn't I never thought that I would become an academic, a professor, or something like that. I knew that in order to have the kind of impact that I wanna have in the world and the society that we're all functioning in, having those degrees would, support me.
Um,
Yes.
And I think that's, incredibly important making those differences is you're making community and you're also broadening your perspective.
Right.
And it sounds like you did both in your time, in school.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I still am in community with people from both my master's and my doctoral programs. And, um, and I still feel so much support to all that they're trying to do and the support that they've lent me. Um, you get through it together. It's not easy. They're not giveaways, neither one of those things. And so you get through it together.
Mhm. And do you
Mhm.
find that you're going back to these people and asking them for support even now? It sounds like it in building out your businesses or personal life.
At this point, no, right? Because I finished the doctorate some time ago. I'm leaning more because now that I'm a founder and a CEO, I'm finding that a lot of people that were in the particular healing field that I'm in don't necessarily go this route. So I'm having to turn more towards people who understand business more than I do. Um, but there were periods of time when I was working as a practitioner or like offering workshops or those kinds of things that I certainly turned toward old professors, fellow students, even, you know, networking groups of alumni. There's all kinds of ways that you can sort of tap into your academic community for support. And I certainly did that when I was first starting out as a therapist.
So okay, so you are looking for people who have more business savvy, we can say, for your business nowadays. How are you finding these people? How are you finding community now?
So, as I mentioned, I've just taken on a business partner who lives in New Zealand, and he has successfully run pretty much on his own website development kind of marketing agency, which so he knows more about running a business than I do. Practically everybody knows more about running the kind of business that I'm running than I do because because they're online platforms. And so I know about the education piece, but I don't know about the tech kind of businessy side of that. So I found a business partner who that's what he does really well. How I found him is divine intervention. Not really positive how I found him. Um, I do know. So one of the people a young woman who graduated from my program and is becoming a psychotherapist, has then proceeded to come and work for the school. And she assists in the training of new students. And she lives in New Zealand. And she introduced me to her partner who introduced me to Andrew. So it's like, however many, what's the saying? Yes, degrees of separation. It's like that.
Mhm.
And and Andrew had reached a point in his career where he has a lot of faith and belief in the potential for psychedelics to change the world, and he wanted to kind of transition into, work that would have, some kind of impact in that field, and so when the 2 of us met, it was like I told him that I have an avatar for him and he has a cape. Because all the kind of tech stuff that my Luddite butt has really no idea, and a lot of the business acumen, frankly, because I was working as a private practitioner and consultant, he brings it.
Mm.
And also through, one of the other ways that I've met lot of people who've been able to advise me was actually through fundraising. I don't know if that would be interesting to anyone or not,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was super into people, even people, there are people who are interested in investing, but there's also people who, even if they're not willing to invest, they're interested in your success. And
Mm.
so they'll guide you. And I've taken just a ton of guidance from people that I've talked to about that. Really helpful stuff.
Oh, that's super interesting. Let's go into that a little bit further then. So, with fundraising, how? I mean, where would you even start with finding people who would be in support of something so specific like psychedelics and, finding community and the help that you need through fundraising?
Mhm. Um, well, for the first raise for when I just launched the Awaken the Dream School, it was friends and family. Just crafting, like, really beautiful email and following up and setting up phone calls and then following up who they said I should talk to instead of them, and it was really just this is where the love and the passion becomes really useful because you take a lot of no's, but
Mhm.
you also take a lot of no's that are like, "But let me introduce you to this person," or, "I love what you're doing, keep going, I can't invest at this time," and you just don't take any of it personally, and it's sort of a numbers game. So my first raise was really friends and family, although some of my friends are philanthropists and serial investors, serial founders, so that helped. Living in Silicon Valley at one point in your life helped.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I actually find that a little bit different, but to be true also for this podcast. When I reach out to people, I'll reach out to someone and I'll have them on my podcast. And then I'll ask that person who is on my podcast, "Oh, can you get me in touch with a few more people, who you may know who would be good to come onto this podcast?" And it's just like, it's like a spider web and a degree of connection things like you were talking about earlier. And it just feels like so incredible almost to feel like moving through these connections and through this world of people. And at least for this podcast, getting to know their story and building community, and
Yep.
it's so impressive to me being able to do this all online too. I think that's so cool. You know, being able to get in contact with so many people from all around the world. I mean, you're in Barcelona right now. Like, that's insane. And we're recording this podcast. And, I think that community aspect is so important in hearing no and being okay with it and moving on.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and, that was one of the better business skills that I've been able to develop since making this idea or dream of mine into something real. I mean, who wakes up in the morning and says, "I guess I'm gonna launch a school," right? And I did. And one of the better tools that I've been given as a result of this journey is actually came from fundraising because there is certainly a degree of tenacity that is required that just there is no no. It's all yes. In your mind, it's all yes. And so now that we're growing into a much bigger thing and the raise is a much bigger raise and it feels so much easier than it did the first time, it's amazing because I've I've taken all the knocks, I've taken all the yes. I've I I've been in the field. I've gotten so much encouragement. I see what matters to people. Um, yeah, there's just this thing about not taking no's the not taking no's personally thing is big.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I learned how to be okay with no through my first job that I hated so much is probably because of how much I heard no. I was a salesperson, I was a freight broker, and you just hear no, and I had to make like at least 100 calls a day. And you're constantly hearing no, and it really fucking sucked. But I would never take that experience back for the entire world. It taught me so much about entrepreneurship, so much about, even just like womanhood and just like being strong, and just like hearing no and saying, you know what, I don't care. I'm going on to the next person then.
Well, because you just reminded me because there's the other piece of it that lands really deeply in you. Ask for what you want.
Mm.
Don't assume somebody's gonna come up and volunteer. And then, because then there's the yeses, and you can say, "I need this, I want this is when I want it," and then there's the people who say yes, and learning to ask for what you want, especially for women, is huge.
Mm.
I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to ask for anything at this point. I don't think so.
Good.
except maybe I shake with a frog, but
Yeah. Totally understandable. I do want to touch also on, the fact that you are not only a woman entrepreneur, but a woman BIPOC entrepreneur. And you have gone into the depths of your own ancestry and who you are. Do you feel like that at all impacts who you are as an entrepreneur and the kind of businesses that you're trying to create?
that's also an interesting question because, there was a very most of my life, I knew that I was biracial, right? That I was race is a construct, but you know what I'm saying. That my dad was black and my mom was white, and a good portion of my life I was raised to identify as black. However, um, I didn't know anything about my ancestry on my father's side. He died when I was 6 years old, so I was raised in white culture, and I think that the effect that that had on me is making me a seeker. Um, and and then more recently, I had an opportunity to work with an African psychedelic plant medicine called iboga that I certainly do not advocate for everyone doing, but I did. And through that medicine, um, I was able to sort of connect in deeply meaningful ways with my African ancestry. And I would say that that has changed the way that I proceed as, you know, the figurehead for this where I feel like it's just coming through me. It's not really about me, but um and that is that I believe that some kind of rootedness, some kind of sense of connectedness with one's ancestors, um, I'll say for myself, creates a sense of fearlessness and support, having support that I didn't have before. I feel very much like I know very much that my ancestors have my back. And that leaves a lot less up to question for me.
Mhm.
Um, Without waxing too woo. I'll just say that that has been really, really powerful for me, and that that is one benefit that people can, experience as a result of, interacting with some of these medicines, whether it be medicines that are coming out of the Amazon or medicines that are coming out of Africa or, medicines that are coming out of, um, anywhere really. Um is that very often people will gain a sense of being accompanied in ways that they didn't have access to before.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like almost it brought you security almost. Is that the right word
Yeah,
here?
there's a sense of security. Sure. I mean, having generations and generations of badass, you know, black warriors and strong, powerful women behind me. Yeah, it's security, all right. Well, it's also security. Yeah,
That's great. Yeah, I know in another podcast too, you've mentioned before that, you know, we don't have to wait to be good ancestors. We can
right.
be good ancestors today. What did you
Yeah.
mean by that when you said that?
Well, the way I think about it is I could live my life according to, and I do lead my life at some level according to legacy thinking, right? What people might make of my life after I've gone. But what if I thought about impact that I can have as an elder now? And what if I thought about aging and being an elder in a completely different way? Instead of being useless and discarded, I thought about it as being needed and carrying wisdom and experience and being support to young people in my life. And that's what being an ancestor now means. Not they need we elders are needed now, not after we're dead, now.
Mm. Very good point, especially, to go back to our topic from earlier, especially today. You know,
Right.
especially as a young person that is just combobulated with different views on the world and ways that I should see things. It feels so nice to have like almost a center, people that I can go to feel more calm and centered with and find that community that doesn't, make me want to think about how the craziness of the world that's going on.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like what elders can provide now because they've gained it through the course of their lives is, they sort of have deep roots, right? That can kind of reach down and anchor them in place. And they sort of have long branches, right, that reach up to the sky and in some cases the spiritual realms or the cosmos. And so I kind of think about it like a tree. And I think about it in terms of all of these young people that need someone that they can lean up against that's solid and that they trust and that is safe. And that's kind of what being an ancestor now looks
Yeah.
like, feels like to me. And so that also involves continuously doing my own work, right?
Mm.
God, I found more of my own roots because then I can be more solid for anyone who wants to lean on me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I can't emphasize the point enough to founders and entrepreneurs that you can't do things without the help of others around you. And I feel like you've definitely been learning this through your Awaken the Dream School and now creating a bigger school on top of that that you really like our ancestors and the people who are in our lives today are meant to be leaned on, especially when you're starting a company.
Mhm. Mhm. Definitely. And, you know, it's for anyone who's kind of shy about reaching out, um, I can't tell you how good it feels for me to have, 2 young women who came into my life as students, right? And went through my program and have their own, credentials as well, but now I'm bringing them with me and sharing whatever they can, find useful out of my life and out of, whatever abundance I can create through this business. It's amazing. I it's one of the joys for me of being an entrepreneur is being able to bring younger people up with me and actually even envisioning them taking over.
I think that, especially as we move into this world, we're going to need, more community and more connection in that sense, not to feel afraid to reach out and ask questions and ask for what you want and, continuing to build like companies that make a difference too, that make an impact, especially going through the traumas that we experience in our life and using that trauma to create positive impact in our day to day.
Right. Right. I think that everything we've been told about aging, pretty much everything is a lie. And what that looks like from a business perspective is that elders who are already in business are really excited to bring, you know, to engage with those who are younger or less experienced with them and sort of bring them along, right? And then on the other side of it, I believe that more there's ageism, intense ageism in our culture, and young people should be looking to bring elders in
Mm,
because they have a lot to offer. And you don't see
mm.
that as much as I believe we should.
Yeah, absolutely. I love my grandma to pieces, and, I look up to her so much because she is she's younger, she's probably in her mid-60s right now, but the reason why I bring her up is because she's she does coding for companies still. She's 65 and she's still coding away and, she's creating programs left and right. And I'm like, wow, if you are someone who's young, it's incredible to look up, to even just, like, the people within your own family to say, like, "Holy shit, that's so cool that you're doing it," and being told constantly that the older people in our life need to act a certain way, need to be a certain way. It's so awesome to watch them break boundaries and say, "You know what? No, I'm gonna do it my own way, and I'm gonna show the people in my life that I can do it a different way."
Right. Yeah, I was in my late 50s when I completed my doctorate.
Hmm,
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm. You can start whenever.
Mhm.
You can start whenever, as long as you've got all your faculties.
Mhm. So we're kind of nearing towards the end of this podcast, but I do want to talk a little bit about, purpose in our lives. As an entrepreneur, in your own experience, how can other entrepreneurs use their personal stories and challenges to create meaningful impact amongst others?
Well, I find stories to be quite inspirational. So, I think that one way that people can use their personal stories is to inspire others. That, people who are CEOs or people who are sitting in certain positions or people who've had a certain amount of success, they still put their pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us, right? And so I think it's really part of the way that we can use our personal stories is to inspire others. We can also use our personal stories to stay grounded and to stay humble. And I think that that's also important is to kind of just remember who you are and where you came from. And yeah, I think sometimes staying in touch with your personal stories can remind you who, if you are in service, which I believe many of us are in one way or another, um, of like how you got into this in the first place and who you hope to serve and what you hoped that service would look like.
Mm,
And yeah, I'd say those are the three bigger ways that I hope it plays out for me and it has played out for those who have influenced me with their stories.
mm. And do you find yourself going back to your dreams to ground yourself and go back to
All
your own personal story? Yeah.
all the time. My Not just my dreams, our dreams are an infinite resource that we have culturally moved away from, but that has been in existence and been being utilized since time immemorial. And so I work my own dreams on a regular basis, and they guide so much of what I do and who I am and how I move and what's important. And um, yeah, have taught me so much about relying on intuition. I mean, I could just go on and on about, I've spent 2 decades studying um, dreams and healing. And so, yes, every day. I mean, every day that I don't remember my dreams every single day, but whenever I remember a dream, try to relate to it in some way.
Amazing. And what's one step for people who are listening if they wanted to start using the power of their dreams for entrepreneurship, for being a founder? What is one actionable step that you would recommend to them?
Okay, so there's what they wanna do is they want to, 1, don't use an alarm clock because alarm clocks are dream killers, and you won't remember your dream. So you want to start thinking about developing a relationship with your dream, and so that relationship thrives on just like any other relationships thrives on attention. So anytime you have a dream or a snippet of a dream, you want to write it down or record it into your phone. If you record it into your phone, I recommend writing it down afterwards. Then, when you have a dream, if you want to get closer to what the reason is that you're having that dream at this particular time, or what meaning there might be there for you in this dream, you're going to take the dream that you've written out, and on a sheet of paper, you're going to make two columns. In one column, you're going to list out every image that's in the dream, or maybe like an environment or a poignant group of words. You make that list on one side. And then on the other side, across from each of the images, you are going to write down, what does this image mean to me in my day-to-day life, in my waking life? What are my associations to this image? When you're done, forget about the dream and forget about the list of images. Just read yourself the language that's been transmitted to you by way of these dreams, right? What your associations are, what you think about when you think about those images. It's pretty mind-blowing for people. So just read that second column and see what's in there, and you'll have a very good idea of why this dream now.
Mm. And should questions be asked after if you have a certain understanding of what your dream is, sitting down and asking yourself, okay, now that I understand a little bit more about what my unconscious is trying to tell my conscious self,
Right?
how can I use this to better my life, to change my life in more positive ways?
Right, well, that just depends on what the dream is telling you, because the dream might be very much in support of something that's going on in your life. It might
Mm.
be very much not in support of something that's going on in your life. It might very much be pointing at something that you want to heal in your life. It might be the answer to a question of where you want to go in your life. So it really depends on what's held in that language that you get. What I would say is more may be valuable is you can ask the dream a question before you go to sleep and
Oh.
get a dream that's called dream incubation, and get a dream in response. And the thing where people kind of mess this up a little bit is they'll get a dream that looks like it has nothing to do with their question, because the dreams aren't speaking a language, a literal language, it's symbolic language. So no matter what dream you get in response to seeding a question into your sleep, do that process with it, and you'll see that it might in fact be your answer.
Oh, I love this. Okay. What did you say it was called? Dream incubation?
Dream incubation is where you seed a question into your sleep for your dreams to respond to. Mhm. And the process of making the 2 columns is called dream associations. So the column to the right is gonna be the language of the dream.
Mm, wonderful. Well, I'll definitely be using that.
Yep.
And I hope that people who are
And
listening.
it's in my book, Dream Work for Growth and Healing.
And where can people find your book?
I think it's iBooks.
My
You
books?
get it through
Okay.
iBooks, get it on Amazon. So iBooks, you can get the ebook, which is kind of nice to get because then you can print it out and have lots of extra pages for writing stuff out. It's quite beautiful, and it really is a guided dream journal. So I take you through step by step how to make sense of your dreams and give you kind of space to work all of that out. You can also get a hardcover copy of the book through Amazon or my website or my Instagram page. But what I've been hearing is it's so beautiful, nobody ever wants to write in it. But you can still read it and get the steps.
Oh, gorgeous. Well, for anybody who's listening who wants to learn more about how to dive into your dreams deeper and bring out the meanings of your unconscious, then this sounds like the perfect opportunity to go download Catherine's book. Beautiful. Well, Catherine, I have one last question for you as we leave this episode. I know earlier you talked about if you could look back at your childhood self, you would tell her, to stay strong and to maintain hope. If you could tell other entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space and, just general founders, about what you've learned from your journey, what would you say would be the most important piece of being an entrepreneur?
Find your people. Find your people, communities where it's at. Find your people, talk to them regularly, even if they're on the other side of the world. Find your people because that helps. And by finding your people, it means people who are excited and passionate and hopeful about the same things that you are, because it helps keep it up. And that's the steam that drives you through all of the rest of it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. I have just had such a pleasure having you on today and learning about your new schools that are coming up and how dreams can impact our lives as entrepreneurs and founders. So, really, thank you.
Thank you. I always love talking about this stuff.
Well, good. You're welcome back on the podcast anytime.
Fun.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sweat Strategy and Success. Dr. Katherine Lawson is a mind body medicine practitioner. She has her doctorate in mind body medicine from Saybrook University with a specialization in integrative mental health. She received her master's degree in counseling psychotherapy with an emphasis in depth psychology from Pacifica Graduate University. She now runs Awake in the Dream School, which is a school of integrative consciousness, which provides online education, certification, and community for therapists and wellness practitioners who want to support their clients as they prepare for and integrate the often life-changing impact of psychedelic medicine. It was a pleasure having Dr. Catherine on today with us, and I hope you were able to step away with some new actionable tools on how you can use your dreams to improve your life and to become a better entrepreneur and founder. Thank you for listening to another episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, save, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms and send me a message, which I will input the ways in which you can reach out to me in the description of this podcast. Also, share this with someone that you know who's interested in using dreams to improve their business and their personal life, and also how to build better communities. Thank you again, and I'll see you next Wednesday.